I'm Sarah Peterson, 32, and last month my world came apart at a dinner table in Austin, Texas. The home my grandparents, Eleanor and Thomas Miller, left me became a battlefield. My entitled sister, Jessica, and my silent parents turned it into a war zone. That night in front of them all, Jessica slapped me across the face and shoved me through the door of my own house. "Get out of my house," she spat, her eyes blazing with a fury I'd seen many times before, but never directed with such raw venom. It was a cold, Texas November night, and the chills seeped into my bones, matching the icy dread in my heart. My parents, Susan and David Peterson, sat frozen at the dining room table, amidst the ruins of what had been meant to be a reconciliation dinner. No protest, no defense, just cold, calculating eyes as I stumbled into the yard, my lip bleeding under the harsh glare of the porch light. The familiar scent of Eleanor's pot roast still hung in the air, a cruel mockery of the warmth it was supposed to represent. I remember standing under the flickering street lamp, my breath clouding in the crisp Austin air, staring at the locked door of the house that was legally mine, yet felt utterly out of reach. The silence from inside was more deafening than any shout. Something broke inside me that night, something fundamental and irreplaceable. The last vestiges of hope for a functional family shattered like the crystal vase Jessica had once thrown in a fit of pique. I whispered, the words barely audible even to myself, "Game over." It was a quiet declaration of war, a promise to myself that this humiliation would be the last. A week earlier, I had tried, foolishly, to heal old wounds. It was a recurring fantasy of mine, a belief that if I just tried hard enough, if I prepared the perfect meal, if I extended the olive branch one more time, my family would somehow transform into the loving unit I always craved. I cooked Grandma Eleanor's famous beef bourguignon recipe in my cozy, albeit small, Austin apartment, a dish that always brought a smile to Eleanor's face, hoping that one family meal, imbued with the spirit of our beloved grandmother, could finally reset decades of ingrained favoritism and quiet resentment. The aroma filled my modest kitchen, a comforting scent that belied the storm gathering on the horizon. Jessica showed up 45 minutes late, as usual, her designer handbag slung casually over her shoulder, a smirk playing on her lips as she surveyed my tiny place. "Cozy," she drawled, making it sound more like a criticism than a compliment. Mom, Susan, handed me a store-bought pecan pie, muttering something about unexpected traffic on Mopac, even though she knew I'd spent hours on a homemade apple tart. Dad, David, grunted a request for a craft beer from my limited selection, barely acknowledging my presence. The conversation, if one could call it that, followed its predictable, soul-crushing pattern. When I cautiously mentioned my new coding project, a sophisticated financial management app I'd meticulously developed and recently pitched at work, a project I was genuinely passionate about, Patricia waved me off with a dismissive hand gesture. Her attention had already drifted, her gaze fixed on Jessica. "That's nice, Sarah, but let's hear about Jessica's new venture." Jessica, seizing the spotlight with practiced ease, launched into her usual lengthy pitch about her struggling boutique fitness startup. Or a fit. Her voice, typically sweet and demure when she wanted something, took on an almost evangelical fervor as she recounted her business woes. "Investors just don't get my vision, you know. It's revolutionary, but they're so stuck in their old ways." She lamented the lack of funding, the endless rejections, painting herself as a misunderstood visionary. Robert, ever the doting father to his favored child, nodded sagely, his eyes wide with admiration, as if she were the next Elon Musk, rather than someone whose business model consisted mostly of lavish spending and minimal profit. "You'll get there, sweetheart. Just keep pushing. You're a natural entrepreneur." He had said those exact words countless times, each repetition a fresh stab to my gut. The bourguignon grew cold on our plates as Jessica continued her monologue, occasionally punctuated by my parents' enthusiastic affirmations. I tried to interject, to pivot the conversation, to find some common ground, but I was invisible. My accomplishments, my passions, my very presence were mere background noise. The tipping point, the final straw that broke the camel's back of my long-suffering patience, came when Patricia, leaning forward conspiratorially, asked about the house. The beautiful, sprawling craftsmen Alina and Thomas had lovingly maintained for decades, and most importantly, had left solely to me. Have you updated the kitchen yet, Sarah? Jessica thinks it would be perfect for her new line of wellness cooking classes. She's looking for a space with character, and that big, open kitchen, it's just calling her name. Patricia's words, though delivered with a saccharine sweetness, were laced with a passive aggression I knew all too well. My fork, halfway to my mouth with a piece of the perfectly cooked beef, froze. The rich flavor of the wine sauce turned to ash in my mouth. "It's mine," I managed to choke out, my voice barely a whisper, thick with disbelief and a rising tide of anger. "They left it to me. It's in the will." It wasn't a question, it was a statement of fact, a boundary I thought had been clearly established years ago. Jessica's eyes, usually a placid blue, narrowed into venomous slits. Her carefully constructed facade of victimhood dissolved, replaced by pure, unadulterated entitlement. "You don't need all that space, Sarah. You're single, you work from home. I do. I have a growing business, I need a showcase. You're selfish." The accusation, flung with such casual cruelty, hit me harder than any physical blow. Then, just as the words hung in the air, the world tilted. Her hand, usually so manicured and delicate, cracked across my face with surprising force. The sting burned, a searing pain that started on my cheek and radiated through my entire body. But what cut deeper, far deeper than the physical blow, was the continued, deafening silence from my parents. Their faces remained impassive, their eyes fixed on some distant point, utterly detached from the unfolding drama. It was as if I wasn't even there, as if my pain, my humiliation, was utterly irrelevant. That moment solidified a truth I had always subconsciously known. I was on my own. Shaking, my cheek still throbbing, the metallic taste of blood in my mouth, I drove aimlessly through the familiar streets of Austin. The twinkling city lights, usually a source of comfort, seemed to mock my solitude. I ended up at a quiet coffee shop, still open late, its warm glow a stark contrast to the coldness I had just experienced. My phone buzzed, a lifeline in the darkness. It was my friend Michelle Adams, a fierce, loyal ally from college who had been my rock through countless family dramas. Her text simply read, "You okay, call me." I pulled into a parking spot, hands trembling so badly I almost dropped my phone. I called her, and the moment she picked up, the carefully constructed dam of my composure burst. I told her everything, the words tumbling out in a torrent of pain, anger, and betrayal. The years of favoritism, the casual disregard, the final, humiliating slap, my parents' chilling silence. I recounted the whole sordid history, culminating in the demand for my house. Michelle didn't hesitate. Her voice, usually so calm and measured, was now sharp with indignation. "They want the house, Sarah. It's not about your well-being, it's about what they can get. Protect what's yours. Start digging. You have to fight back." Her words, though direct, were exactly what I needed to hear. They were a call to action, a reminder that I wasn't powerless. That night, fueled by a mixture of righteous fury and a desperate need for validation, I opened Alina's will. It was tucked away in a safe deposit box, a document I had glanced at briefly after her passing, but never truly scrutinized. Now, I pored over every line, every clause. It was meticulously drafted, a testament to Alina's foresight and meticulous nature. Signed by 3 reputable witnesses, her doctor, her lawyer, and a close family friend, all of whom had been vetted and respected in the community. There was even a doctor's note, attached as an addendum, proving Alina's full mental clarity and sound judgment at the time of signing. It was, to my relief, airtight. The house, specifically and unequivocally, was left to my beloved granddaughter, Sarah Peterson, free and clear of all encumbrances. Michelle, true to her word, connected me with Laura Jenkins, a sharp, no-nonsense property lawyer known for her aggressive approach in disputes. Laura, a formidable woman with a reputation for winning, reviewed the papers with a hawk-like intensity. She listened patiently as I recounted the dinner, her expression never wavering. After a thorough examination of the will and property deeds, she looked up, her gaze steady and unwavering. "Sarah," she said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion, "your parents and sister are, legally speaking, squatting on your property. Under Texas law, if you wish, you can evict them in as little as 72 hours. Or you can sell it. It's your choice. This document is ironclad. There's no ambiguity here." The words hung in the air, a revelation that simultaneously stunned and empowered me. The weight of years of passive acceptance began to lift. I had leverage, real, undeniable leverage. The idea of selling the house, of severing that last physical tie to a painful past, began to crystallize in my mind. It wasn't just a house. It was a symbol of my family's dysfunction. I already had potential buyers lined up, a young couple, the Carters, who had expressed keen interest months ago, before Aliner's passing. They were a charming, enthusiastic pair with 2 small children, and they had fallen in love with the sprawling garden Aliner had cultivated with such care, and the smart home system I had meticulously installed over the past year. They spoke of raising their family there, of children playing in the sun-drenched yard, of preserving Aliner's legacy. It felt right. We met the very next day, the Carters and I, at Laura's office. The conversation was easy, professional, and refreshingly devoid of drama. Within hours, the contracts were drawn up. We signed for $850,000, a fair price that reflected the market value of the beloved Austin home. The ink on the paper felt like a balm, a declaration of independence. For once, after 3 decades of being overlooked, of having my needs and desires dismissed, the leverage was undeniably, finally, mine. The game, as I had whispered under the street lamp, was indeed over. A new one, however, was about to begin. With Laura's help, I orchestrated my next move with surgical precision. It was not born of petty malice, but of a deep-seated need for justice, a reclaiming of dignity that had been systematically eroded over 3 decades. I assembled a package, not a gift, but a carefully curated collection of legal documents designed to dismantle their illusions of entitlement. It included notarized copies of Aliner's ironclad will, the recently signed sale contract for the house, and most satisfyingly, a formal, legally binding 72-hour eviction notice, delivered via certified mail and a professional process server. The clock had started ticking. The calls began that very night. My phone, which had been largely silent from my family for weeks, suddenly erupted with a frantic urgency. Patricia's voice, usually tinged with a feigned sweetness, was now sharp with panic and a thinly veiled accusation. "Sarah, this must be a mistake. You can't be serious about this. We're family." The hypocrisy was staggering. Jessica's message, left in a furious, barely coherent voicemail, was pure venom. "You're not getting away with this, Sarah. That house is ours. You'll regret this, I promise you." Her words, once designed to instill fear, now sounded like the desperate cries of a cornered animal. Robert, ever the quiet enabler, finally called, his voice uncharacteristically strained. "We need to talk, Sarah, as a family." The irony was not lost on me. Where was this desire for family talk when I was being slapped and discarded? I didn't answer a single call. I let them ring, their frantic pleas and increasingly vitriolic accusations washing over me without touching the resolve I had finally found. I had endured their silence for years. Now it was my turn to enforce it. Jessica, predictably, escalated the situation. Her lawyer, a smooth-talking individual with an oily voice, called my attorney, Laura, within hours. He tried to bluff, a tactic that had likely worked for Jessica countless times before. "The house is a family asset," he purred, trying to sound authoritative. "Our clients have established residency, and there are grounds for a protracted legal battle over inheritance rights." Laura, however, was more than a match for him. Her response was calm, concise, and utterly devastating. She cut him off before he could launch into a longer spiel. "The will clearly states the property is solely Sarah Peterson's. Furthermore, Texas law imposes a 4-year limit on contesting a will after it's been probated. That period expired 2 years ago. Check the records, counselor. You'll find Ms. Peterson's title is unassailable." There was a pregnant pause on the other end of the line, a sudden silence that spoke volumes. The lawyer, clearly outmaneuvered, hung up without another word. The bluff had been called, and he had no hand to play. For 30 years, I had swallowed every slight, every injustice, every thinly veiled insult. My stolen college fund, secretly diverted to cover Jessica's first failed business venture. My canceled science trip to Costa Rica, the money repurposed for Jessica's lavish Sweet 16 party. The brand new SUV Jessica received for her college graduation, while I rode the public bus, juggling 2 part-time jobs to pay for my own education. The quiet shame of constantly being second best, of perpetually striving for an approval that never came. Each incident, a tiny cut, had collectively bled me dry. But this time, the dynamic had shifted. This time, I held the knife. And I was finally ready to use it, not to inflict pain, but to carve out my own space, my own future, free from their shadow. The dominoes fell fast, with a satisfying, almost poetic rhythm. Jessica's Orifit startup, already teetering on the brink, crumbled under the weight of her increasingly erratic behavior and the bad press surrounding her eviction. Creditors, emboldened by the public knowledge of her financial instability, seized her remaining assets. The bank, no longer willing to extend her credit, repossessed her luxury car, a gleaming white BMW she had always flaunted. Stripped of her carefully constructed image, she had no choice but to move into a rundown shared apartment in a less desirable part of Austin, far from the upscale neighborhoods she had always frequented. Her social media, once a curated feed of aspirational living, devolved into a bitter stream of angry, incoherent rants against me, against the system, against anyone who dared to question her. But the public, having seen her entitlement play out in such a dramatic fashion, was no longer sympathetic. Her posts were met with a resounding silence, or worse, outright ridicule. Patricia and Robert, who had always played financial safety net for Jessica, found themselves in a precarious position. In a desperate attempt to prop up Jessica's failing business and cover her escalating debts, they had quietly refinanced their own comfortable suburban home in Cedar Park, a decision they now deeply regretted. With no bailout from me, no last-minute intervention to save them from the consequences of their choices, they were trapped. Unable to make the increased mortgage payments, they filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Their house, the one they had poured their life savings into, was foreclosed upon. The visible symbol of their middle-class stability and the source of their quiet pride was gone. Their social circle, once so tightly knit and carefully cultivated, abandoned them like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Mom's upscale book club, a pillar of her social life, quietly dropped her. Dad's golf buddies, fair-weather friends at best, cut ties, unwilling to be associated with financial ruin. The silence they had imposed on me now echoed back to them, amplified and agonizing. I blocked their calls. Their initial frantic pleas for reconciliation, filled with feigned remorse, quickly morphed into venomous accusations, then finally into a chilling, absolute silence. The emotional tether, once a suffocating chain, was finally severed. I was free. Meanwhile, the Carters, the young family who had bought Alina's house, sent me periodic updates, heartwarming photos of their kids playing in Alina's meticulously tended garden. They embraced the spirit of the home, its history, its warmth. One picture particularly touched me. A small wooden sign they had lovingly placed amidst the vibrant blooms, bearing a simple inscription, "Alina's Roses." It was a quiet tribute, a promise that the love and care Alina had poured into that home would continue to flourish, nurtured by a family who truly appreciated it. The house, once a battleground, was now a sanctuary. With the substantial sale money from the house, I made a conscious decision to invest in myself, in my own dreams, in a future built on my terms. I purchased a charming, smaller bungalow in a vibrant Austin neighborhood, a place that felt like a fresh start, untainted by past resentments. It had a sunlit studio, perfect for my creative endeavors. I finally launched my dream project, a coding education app for kids, designed to make learning programming fun and accessible, particularly for underserved communities. It was a passion project, born from my own love of logic and creation, and a desire to empower the next generation. Michelle, whose unwavering support had been invaluable, became my business partner, bringing her sharp marketing acumen to the venture. The app, called Codecraft Juniors, resonated immediately. Downloads started climbing, steadily at first, then exponentially, far faster and with far more genuine success than Jessica's struggling Orifit ever had. We were making a real impact, building something meaningful. Several months later, at a prestigious Seattle tech conference, a place I had only dreamed of attending before. I stood on stage, the bright lights illuminating my confident smile. I was demoing Codecraft Juniors to a captivated audience of investors, developers, and educators. The interface was intuitive, the games engaging, the educational impact clear. When I finished, the crowd erupted in enthusiastic applause. From the front row, Michelle, beaming with pride, shouted above the din, her voice clear and strong. Eleanor would be proud. And in that moment, for the first time in a very long time, I truly believed her. It wasn't about proving anything to my family anymore. It was about honoring Eleanor's legacy, living a life of purpose and authenticity. One evening, driving home from a late-night work session, I found myself on the familiar street where the old house stood. The evening light was soft, casting long shadows. I didn't stop, didn't even slow down, but glanced briefly at the house. The roses, Eleanor's beloved roses, bloomed brighter than ever in the Carters' well-tended garden, their vibrant colors a testament to new life, new beginnings. I didn't feel the old pangs of hurt or resentment. There was no bitterness, just a quiet sense of peace. I just smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. For once, the house wasn't a burden, a symbol of strife, or a battleground of family dysfunction. It was alive again, filled with new love, new laughter, new memories being made by a family who cherished it. And I was alive again, too, unburdened and free. I whispered to myself, the words a gentle breeze on my lips, infused with a newfound freedom. Game over, and the best game has just begun.